So I'm pleased to introduce Elena Milashina, who is an award-winning investigative journalist who works for the independent Russian newspaper Novaya Gazeta. And Elena is particularly known for her work in the Northern Caucasus and especially on Chechnya. And it was Elena who broke the news about the anti-gay purges in Chechnya in 2017. And her shocking articles inspired the making of the now Oscar shortlisted documentary film Welcome to Chechnya. And this film will be available for streaming during this festival. So, Yelena Milashina, I'm very happy that you could be with us from a snowy Moscow. And we will talk more
Thank
about
you.
the anti-gay purges in Chechnya very soon. But first, I wonder if you could just give us a little background on Chechnya itself for us to understand better what kind of a place is Chechnya? What's it like to live in the Chechen Republic today?
Well, Chechen Republic it's small region on south of Russia. Back in 90s, when Soviet Union destroyed and 15 republics of Soviet Union took apart and gained their independence. Chechnya was the only region in Russia who followed this line and wanted and claimed for independence also. But Russian authorities back then, it was President Yeltsin, um, started a war in Chechnya in 1994 and lost this war in 1996. There was a peaceful agreement between Chechen authorities and the Russian authorities. And then in 2 years, when Putin actually came to the power, President Putin, the second Chechen war started. And this war was very, um, mm, I can say that anybody lost or won in this war, but there were a lot of um, people who suffered from this war, both on both sides of this conflict. Chechnya stayed inside Russia, and there is no question of independence of Chechnya anymore. But a lot of people, hundreds and thousands of people, were forced to leave Chechnya and Russia and became refugees. It was the biggest wave of refugees since World War II in Europe. Um, because of the war that was actually happening in the middle of Europe, because Chechnya is inside of Europe, inside of Russia, and Russia is partly belongs to geographically to Europe. And since 2007, there was established a regime of Ramzan Kadyrov in Chechnya, and this regime was established as a totalitarian, as a power of one person, and since almost 14 years, it is a totalitarian, and it's very scary to live in Chechnya. Although Chechnya, geographically and on the paper, is a territory of Russia, the Russian law is not practicing or not working in Chechnya, and the people in Chechnya are not um, protected by the law, even as much as people in Russia protected by the law. In it's not working really well, the law system in Russia, the judicial system in Russia, but in Chechnya it's not working at all, and a lot of human rights violations still going on there. People I'm sorry, continue to disappear, to be kidnapped, to be tortured, to put in a secret jails. And the journalists and human rights defenders continue to write about it and talk about it for for years. But we can, for all these years, 14 years since Ramzan Kadyrov was became a head of Chechnya, we couldn't push the law and the federal government to start even one criminal case against the Chechen policemen who actually, I'm sorry, practicing all those human rights violations. And in 2017, we came to the point when Ramzan Kadyrov was creating a view of Chechen person like a, I don't know, a strong man, and a woman who should sit home and burn children and take care of her husband. And all the people in Chechnya who doesn't get to this picture are punished and being forced to go out from Chechnya. And that's why the gay purge that we are going to talk about happened, because all those people, LGBT society, uh, it's not going into this picture. It's spoil. They spoil the Chechen blood, what the authorities say, and so they should be get away from this piece of land. They can be Chechens. They should be killed. That's why this thing happened, because of impunity that the federal government of Russia gave to Ramzan Kadyrov in 2007 to fight the terrorism and extremism. And now they're fighting people who belongs to LGBT community, who criticize the authorities, who are bloggers, journalists, activists who just don't like and dare to say something about the reality in Chechnya. So it's completely totalitarian
Okay.
regime in the way we know it in North Korea, in back in Soviet Union during Stalin's times, and etc.
So to sum up, you could say that today, the Chechen Republic, it is a small dictatorship inside of Russia ruled by one man, Ramzan Kadyrov. And then, and he's trying to shape this republic in a very authoritarian and traditional and you could say patriarchal way. And then in 2017, 4 years ago, you discovered that gay people, LGBT people were systematically persecuted, arrested, tortured, and even killed in Chechnya. So how did you first hear news about these persecutions, that something was going on against the LGBT community?
Well, I technically was the one who first wrote publicly in newspaper about it. But before this article was published on 1st April of 2017, there was a group of people who worked in Chechnya, human rights defenders, first of all, journalists of Novaya Gazeta, and some other journalists also. They received this information. I mean, another Russian media received the information that there was not only systematical but massive campaign after the gays in Chechnya, and it was started in the end of February of 2017. So some of other people received this information. They wouldn't be able to check on this information because it's very hard to work in Chechnya, where people silenced by the fear. They are very much afraid to talk to people they don't know and they don't trust, to any new journalist. So only small group of human rights defenders whom I work closely for many years, and we ourselves, the journalists of Novaya Gazeta who work in Chechnya since actually the tragic situation with first Chechen war started in back in 1994, and since then we continue our work, no matter that a lot of our colleagues were two of our colleagues were killed, our colleagues were suffered from this work in Chechnya, but we continue this work. So we have a trust of people inside Chechnya, and we managed to check on this information, although it was really, really hard. Because usually when we are talking about that kind of campaigns, and you should understand clearly that those campaigns, when the people illegally detained, put in secret jails, tortured, and even killed, were happening in Chechnya and still happening right now when we are talking, with many other citizens of Chechnya, for their religion, for their actions, for criticizing the authorities, and so many reasons. There were and there are still, when people, innocent people, being persecuted like that. And the gay people in Chechnya, it was the question of time when it happens with them, but all that happens with them was the same mechanism that was created to put pressure on this population of Chechnya. So, but the problem with the gay people was that in traditional society like Chechnya is, the relatives whose close ones were kidnapped and tortured because they were gays or on the suspect of being gays, those relatives would keep their mouths shut and never ever ask for help from human rights defenders or journalists. And that's why it was very, very hard to get some proofs for the facts and get some names. We managed to do this because we, like I said, had a big um, trust from the people who live in Chechnya and from our sources, which in a lot of areas of Chechnya work and know a lot, and we managed to prove this information, and that's why we published it. And I think nobody but just we could do this. But the time of the situation, it was really, really hard to prove it and to be certain in what we are writing. Right now, I can say that back then we didn't make any mistake, and all facts that we gain in the middle of March of 2017 about the campaign against gays, and all the names and all the secret prisons and their places where the people, a lot of people were detained and kept. And actually, we publishing the first article, we understand now that we saved their lives because they were released after this article. Uh, we didn't make
Okay.
any mistake.
No, you sadly did not. Is it possible to say anything about the scope of these purges? So, how many gay people have been arrested, detained, tortured? How many managed to escape? Is it possible to say something about the scope?
Yeah, we know about that more than 150 were detained from end of February till beginning of April. Uh, we definitely know that at least four of them were killed, and we gave their names to the investigative committee of Russia, but we know much more about people who were the victims and died because they didn't survive through the tortures. But like I said, the relatives do not want us to interfere in this situation, and they never ask us about help. So it was very I am sad to say this, but it was very hard to get any response from the society. Actually, Chechen society in this question stood on the side of Chechen authorities, who said that those people, actually, among the Chechens there are no gays at all. That's what they say. and if they are, they should be killed by their relatives. And that was the other problem why relatives didn't want to talk and give us information about people who were murdered through this campaign, because the relatives were pushed to do this themselves.
Yes, in a terrible scene in Welcome to Chechnya, we see a short clip where a young woman, she's dragged out of a car by, we're told, two of her relatives, and then one of the men, he picks up a heavy stone and he kills the woman. Um, so Chechnya is, as you say, it's a traditional society and it's extremely patriarchal. And what can you say about the situation of women in Chechnya and especially the situations of lesbians?
Um, it's like you say, the Chechnya is very traditional society where, and it's going more and more traditional, like in dark Middle Ages, because of the authorities and because it's just like they put pressure, and like I said, that they put patterns for Chechen women and Chechen men to be like people on the picture, uh, the brave masculine man and the beautiful woman who sits home. And it's not the pictures in Chechnya, it's the way the people have to live. And they, under this pressure, became more traditional, less educated, less open to the world, uh, more scared. So this society actually see the role of women as those pictures that those patterns that the authorities sent to them. And there is a big problem with women's rights, with their freedom of movement. They can go themselves to anywhere. They should be together with a man from the family, brother or father. They can go even to Russian regions to get education. Very few Chechen families would accept that their daughters alone go to the universities in Moscow and any other regions of Russia. They all stay and should stay in Chechnya. Um, and this produced the problem for the women first, that they don't have the rights just to be themselves and to do what they want to do. And then another problem, when the girl understands that she's a lesbian or uh, transgender or whatever, belongs to LGBT community, she the first threat that came to her, it's not the authorities. If we compare the situation with the gays, Chechen gays, the men who are suspected or who are actually belongs to LGBT community, their first threat is the authorities, the police. They can go after them, take them to the prison, beat them, uh, do whatever they want to do with them. But in a way of, in a situation with girls, it's the relatives who were doing this function to them, that they can punish them, they can treat them with the Islamic medicine to get this illness out of them, or they can even kill them. In And we know that the number of honor killings, it's a very I don't know, weird and wild habit, goes from the deep traditional societies and still alive in our Caucasus and in Chechnya particular, when the relatives kill the women whom they think behave the way that the owner of the family was um, put under the question. And those situations, the number of those kind of crimes that were committed to women by their relatives are growing lately in Chechnya. That is a very dramatic sign that the society is going deep and deep in the Middle Ages and not progressing at all.
Yeah, so it's a very sad and it's a very difficult situation as it seems to just be going in the wrong direction. And when you follow news from Russia today, one gets the same impression from Russia overall that it's going in the wrong directions in many senses, and especially with the situation of LGBT people. So in the documentary, Welcome to Chechnya, we follow a young man who eventually decides to file criminal complaint, and he's the first one to do so, and I believe he's also the only one who has done that so far. And his case is then dismissed by the court. And one is just left with the impression that LGBT people, not only in Chechnya, are left without anyone to defend them, totally unprotected, but that this goes for Russia as a whole. Is this the correct impression, would you say?
Well, I would agree with this. First of all, it's a problem of impunity, like I said, that was granted to regime of Ramzan Kadyrov by the federal government of Russia in 2007. And so this impunity agreement means that no matter what would do the Kadyrov himself, his close surrounding, and the police, whom he considers like his own army, uh, nobody can punish them. Nobody can put them in the court or on trial for those criminal acts. Uh, uh, and so they can do anything they want, and they're doing this. Uh, so it's very hard to protect people in Chechnya from the unlawful behavior of the authorities and the policemen. It's almost impossible. Like I said, for last 14 years, we didn't manage to raise even one criminal case and put it on trial and against the Chechen police or Chechen authorities. And the second thing is that uh, towards to LGBT community, towards to people, feminist people, to people who raise the question of mm, equal rights for the minorities. It's not very popular topic for the whole Russia, and especially for the authorities who put the laws, who changed the constitution of Russia towards to be more patriarchal, traditional, and actually take Russia also like Ramzan Kadyrov is taking and leading Chechnya to the Middle Ages. The same situation is going on in general in Russia. So it's people who named like social unequal in the laws of Russia, the LGBT community, the minorities. They don't deserve to have families, to be able to marry each other. And it's written in our constitution that the only family that the state accepts it's a marriage between woman and man. And it was happened actually the changes in constitution that saying this exactly thing happened last July when we making um, changing the constitution, and the main purpose of it was to let Putin sit as long as he lives as a president in president chair. But at the same time, we changed this particular article of constitution, uh, saying that the marriage is just between man and woman, accepted by the state. And before that, like I said, we had laws where clearly written. I'm quoting that LGBT community is not social equal to other people in this country. Uh, and This is a problem not only of Chechnya. The whole Russia is, like I say, becoming by this pressure, by this public and other actions of the authorities and people who on that side, more traditional, more dark, more less educative, less open to the changes that actually continue to shock the whole world, because world is changing tremendously, uh, and Russia is out of this way, uh, because it's the
Yes,
way that, yeah.
you could say that it's becoming sadly increasingly difficult, not only in Chechnya, but in the whole of Russia, to be different in any way, to be gay, to be lesbian, to be transgender, gender. And but it's not only difficult to be homosexual, it's also very difficult to be an independent investigative journalist in Russia nowadays. And several of your colleagues have been killed, including Anna Politkovskaya, whom, like yourself, focused mainly on Chechnya. And when I Google your name, Elena Milashina, most of the headlines that appear contain words like courageous threats, death threats, and in your own words, you have received too many threats to count, and you have also on numerous occasions been physically attacked. And after uncovering the gay purges in Chechnya, you had to leave Russia for a while for your own safety. It was simply too dangerous for you to stay in Russia, but then you decided to go back and to continue your work on Northern Caucasus, on Chechnya, despite receiving death threats, even from the president of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov himself. So, Yelena, what drives you to do this very, very dangerous work?
I don't like this question. um, well, when I started to be a journalist and I started to work in Novaya Gazeta, where I work since 1997, so for 24 years already, uh, I definitely didn't think about myself like about investigative journalist who would go to one of the most dangerous place in not only in Russia but in the world, and trying to help people there and write about them because they are voiceless and somebody has to. But investigative journalism is what I really like and to do, and I'm not really bad at it. Um, it I understood it when I was investigating the death of the tragedy of submarine Kursk in back in August 2000, and then the terrorist attack on a school in small city of Russia, Beslan. And those investigations I was holding for many years, and still is paying attention and trying to put all the picture together. So the investigative journalism is what I really, really like to do. Uh, and when my colleague Anna Politkovskaya was killed in October 2006, I was probably one of the I was ready to work on Caucasus because I already did work there. I had connections in Chechnya in the same context that Anna Politkovskaya did. I was helped by my colleagues in my newspaper, so I started to work there. And Chechnya actually came to be a big investigative project, the biggest in my journalist life, where I go from one story to another story. All those stories about the same, the human rights, the most gross human rights violation that could be. It's the kidnappings, it's torturing, and judicial killings. Uh, but that's what's happening in this region, and nobody but Novaya Gazeta can write about it, and nobody but us can help those people and those victims. I think it's the most important reason why we continue to do this, no matter that me personally and my newspaper as a general and all people who work there, because of my work in Chechnya, were receiving death threats. And my editor in chief was willing to close the story many times, but then he understood that it's not the way, uh, it's not good decision, and we have to continue because we are probably the only one who can still save people in Chechnya, get them out from this hell, and um, continue to tell the world what's going on there.
And I'm so happy that there are people like you who continue to work despite difficulties, and that there still is a newspaper like Novaya Gazeta in Russia today, where the freedom of speech is well being is under threat. Now, my last question, just to end this talk, focusing on recent events. So the opposition politician Alexei Navalny, he was arrested upon his return to Russia now recently. And since then, we have seen thousands of protesters marching into the streets all over Russia, demanding his release. And if you look back on the last few years, there has been many such protests in Russia on politics, on environmental issues. So you see that people are not just sitting at home anymore. And it's not only happening in Moscow or St. Petersburg, but all over Russia. And this might be a leading question to you, but do you see any reasons for hope in the Russian society today?
Well, of course. Uh, First of all, I think no matter that how bad the today authorities, Russian authorities, and the regime is, it's still not that bad that we had back in Soviet Union. It's much more free, and I think it maybe the first time for the whole Russian history when people as free as we are now. Fighting this regime, criticizing it, having opportunities to get more about the crimes that were committed by this regime. Uh, it's a unique situation, and think it's the main reason why there is a hope for Russia, because all those protests that we having now and had before, and we will have them in future for sure. Those the signs of new generation that is coming to take their leading role in developing Russia and in the future world. And this generation was born at the times where the fear was not that badly as we had it in back in Soviet Union. So those are fearless people actually. Uh, they have new ways of communication and to receive information. There are some problems with those new ways. There are some problems with the new forms of information of people, but they will deal with those problems because they will be different. So the Russia is changing, and the more bad news you getting from Russia, in a some way, it's a good sign of freedoms that still exist in Russia. Because when there are no freedoms at all, you will never get any bad news. So as the more we know, the more we're able to tell people what's going on in reality in Russia, the more it forms the right understanding and analysis among people who can get this information, and this information they're getting from internet, not from TV, which are controlled by the state and going and dying because it's not responding to the needs of people. They not attract the reality. So the TV, it used to be the main mechanism of controlling the public opinion in Russia. Now it dying, and the new generation who have different sources to get information, the right information, growing and coming. And of course, it's a big hope for Russia and for the whole world. Um, we still have future. I don't know in terms of progress and technical development and all this stuff, but in terms of more freedoms, yes. And coming back to LGBT movement in Russia, it was almost that when the government wasn't paying attention on the gay and lesbians and transgenders back in 90s, there was no any movement. And the movement began and is growing now and developing now only when the state uh, put a finger on them and say, you're the enemies, we don't want you, you're wrong, something wrong with you, we want to get you out of our society. And at this exactly moment, LGBT movement say, no, we are born here, we are the way we born, and we want to live here and fight for our rights. And the LGBT movement made a huge progress. I mean, it's just like right now, I would say the LGBT movement in Russia is an example how the all other movements for other rights, women rights, political freedoms, rights, and so on, should be developed. I think there is a future. It's just a process. It takes time, but there is a hope, of course. Yes.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. And also in the movie Welcome to Chechnya, you can see how the LGBT movement is very active in rescuing victims of the gay purges in Chechnya and helping them to get asylum in other countries. So thank you, Yelena. Thank you for being with us today from Moscow. And thank you for bringing us bad news from Russia and from Chechnya. I hope that you also in the future will be able to bring us some good news. And
Yeah.
thank you everyone for watching this discussion. And if you want to know more about the gay purges in Chechnya, if you want to have more information, I strongly advise everyone to watch the documentary Welcome to Chechnya, who is available for streaming during this festival.
Thank you.